are legal, or some drugs are legal in California, but he has admitted to illegal drug use as well in the past.
The news spread like wildfire. Prince Harry, once the bold face of a modern monarchy, rushed to a California hospital after reportedly collapsing inside his own home. And according to multiple insider accounts, this wasn't some minor health scare. Allegations point to a night of heavy drug use. Years in the making? And now, it's threatening to unravel the royal image once and for all. Behind the palace walls, panic is setting in. Sources say King Charles himself was notified in the dead of night, with senior aides scrambling to contain a scandal that could eclipse anything the firm has faced in decades. Even more shocking, Meghan Markle was allegedly nowhere near her husband during his medical emergency. Instead, she was reportedly seen partying at an exclusive LA club, leaving royal loyalists stunned and furious. This is the moment where the glossy facade is cracking. The whispers of drug abuse, emotional breakdowns, and palace cover-ups, long dismissed as tabloid fodder, are now spilling into the public eye. And for the House of Windsor, the consequences could be catastrophic. It all started with a single phone call, one that would send shockwaves through royal circles on both sides of the Atlantic. According to insider reports, it was David Langdown, Prince Harry's long-serving personal bodyguard, who first discovered him collapsed and unresponsive inside the Montecito estate. Langdown wasn't just a hired hand. A decorated former Scotland Yard officer, he'd been trusted with Harry's protection for years. Someone who had seen the prince through wild nights in Vegas, tense tours in Afghanistan, and endless public scrutiny. But this was different. Sources say Langdown immediately called for emergency medical assistance. Within minutes, paramedics were racing Harry to a nearby California hospital. The word? His condition was critical. And while the doctors fought to stabilize him, one person was conspicuously absent: Meghan. Instead of rushing to be by her husband's side, Meghan reportedly left the estate, heading straight to an exclusive members-only club. Witnesses later claimed she spent the night laughing and mingling with friends, as if nothing had happened. But this wasn't just another royal mishap. For those close to the situation, it was clear. This night marked the beginning of something far more dangerous. For many royal watchers, hearing that Harry's name is now tangled in drug rumors might sound familiar. His struggles with substances have been whispered about in palace halls and tabloid columns for years. But this time, it feels different. Long before Meghan entered the picture, Harry's wild side was well documented. Insiders say his early experiments with marijuana and alcohol began in his teens, what some brushed off as typical rebellion. But those close to him knew better. The behavior escalated quickly. Behind palace doors, the situation became a growing source of alarm. By the early 2000s, reports suggest Harry's drinking binges had turned dangerous, with blackouts and erratic outbursts becoming all too common. Some insiders feared harder substances had entered the mix: whispers of cocaine, magic mushrooms, even experimental drug cocktails. And yet, time and again, royal aides managed to keep the truth under wraps. Any sign of trouble was quickly masked by carefully staged photo ops or sanitized media appearances. For years, the narrative remained tightly controlled. But this latest collapse, it suggests the prince's struggles never really went away and may have spiraled far deeper than anyone dared admit.
There's a fair amount of drugs: marijuana, magic mushrooms, cocaine. I mean, that's going to surprise people.
But important to acknowledge.
Dig a little deeper into Harry's history, and you'll find moments so reckless they're hard to believe. Stories that royal PR teams worked overtime to bury. Back in 2007, one infamous tale resurfaced. Harry was reportedly caught snorting vodka, not drinking it, snorting it. According to medical experts, this bizarre method forces alcohol straight to the brain, bypassing the liver, and can trigger fatal reactions almost instantly. The press barely touched it. Why? At the time, News of the World, the only outlet willing to report it, was embroiled in a separate scandal and eventually shut down. The rest of the media? Silent. But that wasn't the only red flag. In another alarming incident, Harry was said to have inhaled an entire canister of hospital-grade laughing gas, normally reserved for medical procedures, during a public visit. How did he even get his hands on it? Once again, questions were quickly buried under palace spin. These weren't harmless youthful antics. They were dangerous patterns, ignored or explained away by a system determined to protect the royal image at any cost. And now, years later, the cracks in that polished facade are beginning to show.
Harry revealed he turned to drugs and alcohol to cope. He said, "I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was willing to try and do the things that made me feel less like I was feeling." According to Harry, matters worsened when it came time to embark on his royal duties. He told Winfrey, "I was in fight or flight mode."
As Harry's downward spiral takes center stage, new questions are swirling around Meghan's role behind the scenes. Sources claim Meghan wasn't just aware of Harry's struggles, some even allege she enabled them. Insiders whisper that she used his vulnerabilities to maintain control, keeping Harry in a fog of dependency while she managed the public narrative. Whether out of self-preservation or cold calculation, the result is the same: a prince increasingly isolated and broken, and Meghan's past only fuels these suspicions. Long before she married into royalty, her reputation in certain Hollywood circles was colorful. Guests at her first wedding in Jamaica still talk about the party favors that appeared in their gift bags, hand-rolled joints allegedly prepared by Meghan herself. Far from a one-time stunt, this paints the image of someone no stranger to the drug scene and raises chilling questions about her influence over Harry's current state. But Meghan's isn't the only name being whispered in royal circles. Increasingly, eyes are turning to her mother, Doria Ragland. While Doria has kept a relatively low profile in public, insiders claim her private connections run deep, and not always clean. Rumors of ties to California's underworld have circulated for years, with some alleging that Doria still maintains access to certain circles where drugs flow freely. The whispers suggest she may have played a quiet but pivotal role in her daughter's life, and possibly in the ecosystem now surrounding Harry. Nothing is proven, but the fact that these questions are even being asked behind palace walls speaks volumes. If Doria was involved in facilitating access, or even turning a blind eye, the scandal could reach far beyond just Meghan. And that possibility has royal insiders on edge, because if these ties are exposed, the fallout could be catastrophic. What makes this situation even more troubling isn't just Harry's behavior, it's how many people allegedly knew and did nothing. For years, palace insiders, longtime friends, and even certain members of the media reportedly looked the other way. Each time an incident threatened to leak, PR teams would rush in, bury the story, and plaster over the cracks with carefully staged charity events or glossy royal appearances. One former aide described it bluntly. "There's a playbook for this. You distract the press, spin the headlines, and by Monday it's like it never happened." And it worked. For a while. But as Harry's struggles grew darker, the silence from those closest to him became harder to justify. More and more reports of drug-fueled rants, violent outbursts, and emotional breakdowns began surfacing behind the scenes. Yet still, no one stepped in to break the cycle. The enablers, whether out of loyalty, fear, or self-interest, kept the machine running. And now, that machine is dangerously close to collapse. Even Harry's military service, once seen as a turning point in his life, wasn't immune from the shadows. Insiders claim that during his time in the army, drug tests were either conveniently avoided or outright faked. One palace staffer recalled a moment when a surprise test was announced on base, only for Harry to be immediately flown out, avoiding it entirely. Another source pointed to a disturbing incident involving cocaine and vodka during the same period. Yet again, the palace protected him, managing to keep the story far from the public eye. What was once painted as a chapter of discipline and redemption now looks more like another carefully stage-managed illusion. Behind the medals and photo ops, the same patterns continued, unchecked and unaddressed. And as Harry's recent collapse shows, the consequences of years of cover-ups are now impossible to ignore. The moment Harry was admitted to the hospital, royal insiders say the phones in London lit up. No public statement, no carefully worded press release. But behind the scenes, full-blown panic. King Charles was reportedly notified immediately. Senior palace aides scrambled to contain the situation, not to help Harry, but to manage the narrative. If this story exploded, it wouldn't just tarnish Harry's image, it would pull the entire royal brand into the gutter. According to sources close to the royal press office, every move since that night has been calculated. The goal? Keep the headlines focused on fluff pieces, charity appearances, royal garden parties, anything to drown out the whispers coming from Montecito, but the cracks are showing. The sheer scale of what's being whispered now, from drug abuse to manipulation and enabling, is too big to bury completely. And if even a fraction of it comes to light, the monarchy could be staring down one of its most damaging scandals in decades. perhaps the most chilling shift is happening within the palace itself. At first, insiders say the concern was squarely on Harry. But now, the whispers have turned toward Meghan, and her influence is being seen as a real liability. Senior officials are reportedly re-examining events from the past 5 years, asking the hard questions. Did Meghan deliberately isolate Harry from his family? Did she supply or facilitate access to drugs? Was this part of a broader effort to control him? More alarmingly, sources claim there is growing suspicion that Meghan wasn't just passively complicit, she may have been an active architect of Harry's dependence. And if that proves true, the palace will not shield her this time. In fact, some insiders suggest legal teams are already preparing for what could become an explosive public fallout. If Meghan's role in Harry's spiral becomes undeniable, the consequences could shatter her public standing and sever what remains of her royal ties. Inside the palace, preparations are quietly underway, not for a reconciliation, but for a potential media firestorm. Royal lawyers, according to insiders, are already gaming out worst-case scenarios. If Harry's health deteriorates further, if he chooses to speak out, or if more details leak, everything could unravel in an instant. And if Meghan's rumored involvement is confirmed, the palace's response will be swift and ruthless. Some even speculate that divorce is no longer off the table. The goal? Minimize long-term damage to the monarchy's image and cut ties before the scandal swallows them whole. But beyond the legal maneuvering and media spin, a deeper tragedy is unfolding. Harry, once seen as the fresh, relatable face of a modern monarchy, now stands as a cautionary tale. A man caught between the weight of royal expectation, buried personal trauma, and toxic influences that may have pulled him to the brink. The next move? No one knows. But one thing is clear, this story is far from over. And as more pieces come to light, the world may finally see just how deep the cracks inside this royal fairy tale really run. At its heart, this isn't just another royal scandal for the tabloids. It's the slow-motion collapse of a man born into privilege, protected for decades from the consequences of his choices, now facing demons that even the crown can no longer conceal. Whether the palace will succeed in containing this storm remains to be seen. But one truth is impossible to ignore. Harry is not well. And behind the headlines and spin, this is a story of pain, manipulation, and silence. One that could reshape the royal narrative in ways no one ever expected. Because if the full truth comes out, it won't just be Harry's legacy on the line. It could tear open wounds the monarchy has spent generations trying to hide. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories the royals don't want you to hear. And tell us in the comments, do you think the palace can still keep this under wraps? Or is the truth about to explode? Stay tuned.